This video is about Chapter 34, Lesson 3, the Reproductive System. Textbook pages 988 to 994. Our objectives. We're going to describe the effects the sex hormones have on development, name and discuss the structures of the male reproductive system, name and discuss the structures of the female reproductive system, and describe some of the most common sexually transmitted diseases. So an individual can lead a healthy life without reproducing, but is there any other system that is more important for the continuation of a species? Without the reproductive system, no species could reproduce or could produce the next generation, and the species would come to an end. In a certain sense, this may be the most important system in the body. So what effects do estrogens and testosterone have on females and males? So let us now discuss the sexual development. In girls, the effects of the sex hormones include breast development and a widening of the hips in boys, and in boys they result in the growth of facial hair, increased muscular development, and deepening of the voice. So during the seventh week of development, the male and female embryos start to develop differently. The male pattern of development is triggered by the production of testosterone in the embryo's gonads, while in female embryos, testosterone is absent and the female reproductive system develops under the influence of estrogens produced in the gonads. In addition to shaping the sexual development of the embryo, these hormones act on cells and tissues to produce many of the physical characteristics associated with males and females. So like for example, for estrogen for females and testosterone for males, they are steroid hormones primarily produced in the gonads. So puberty is a period of rapid growth and sexual maturation during which the reproductive system becomes fully functional. And puberty actually begins in the brain when the hypothalamus signals the pituitary to produce hormones that affect the gonads, follicle stimulating hormone or FSH, and luteinizing hormones or LH. So what are the main functions of the male reproductive system? The release of LH or luteinizing hormone stimulates cells in the testes to produce increased amounts of testosterone. When puberty is complete, the reproductive system is fully functional, meaning that the male can produce and release active sperm. So testosterone and FSH stimulate the development of sperm, causing the physical changes in male associated with puberty, such as facial hair, increased muscular development, and a deepened voice. So you can also see more of the changes in the figure. When puberty is complete, the reproductive system is fully functional. So the male can produce and release active sperm. So this figure shows the structure of the male reproductive system. So you can see from there the front view and the side view of the male reproductive system. Or just before birth or just after, the testes or the primary male reproductive organs descend from the abdomen into an external sac called the scrotum. So as you can see in the figure, it is highlighted where the scrotum is. The temperature The temperature in the scrotum is a few degrees lower than the normal temperature of the body. Now, why is it so? This lower temperature is important for the sperm development. So how do sperms develop? Within each testis are clusters of hundreds of tiny tubules called seminiferous tubules. So here you can see here it's highlighted at the bottom. It's on the figure rather. Specialized diploid cells within the tubules undergo meiosis and form the haploid nuclei of mature sperm. After they are produced in the seminiferous tubules, sperm are moved into the epididymis, in which they mature and are stored. So here is the picture, or the figure rather, of the epididymis here, and this is on the front view of the structure of the epididymis. From the epididymis, some sperm are moved into a tube called the vas deferens. This vas deferens extends upward from the scrotum into the abdominal cavity and eventually merges with the urethra. So this line tube here, so the tube that leads to the outside of the body through the penis. All right. Glands lining the reproductive tract, including the seminal vesicles, the prostate, and the bulbourethral glands, produce a nutrient-rich fluid called seminal fluid. The seminal fluid nourishes the sperm and protects them from the acidity of the female reproductive tract. So the combination of sperm and seminal fluid is known as semen. Between 50 million and 130 million sperm are present in 1 milliliter of semen, about 2.5 million sperm per drop. So how are sperm released? When the male is sexually aroused, the autonomic nervous system prepares the male organs to deliver sperm. The penis becomes erect and sperm are ejected from the penis by the contractions of smooth muscles lining the glands in the reproductive tract, and this process is called ejaculation. About 2 to 6 milliliters of semen are released in an average ejaculation. So if you're going to imagine how many sperms are released per ejaculation, so that is about 50 million, as what we said, 50 millions to 130 millions per 1 liter. The structure of the sperm, if you're going to look at it, it looks like a tadpole. A mature sperm cell consists of the head, which contains a highly condensed nucleus, a midpiece, which is packed with energy-releasing mitochondria, and a tail or flagellum, which propels the cell forward. So why is it that the mitochondria is found here? This is actually, though you know that the purpose of mitochondria is to power or serves as a power supply for the cell. So this gives the power or the energy for the cell to move. At the tip of the head is a small cap containing enzymes vital to fertilization. So let's move on now to the female reproductive system. So what are the main functions of the female reproductive system? The main function, of course, of the female reproductive system is to produce egg cells or ova. Singular form is ovum. In addition, the system prepares the female's body to nourish a developing embryo. So the primary reproductive organs of the female are the ovaries. Puberty in female starts when the hypothalamus signals and pituitary gland to release FSH and LH. So the follicle-stimulating hormone stimulates cells within the ovaries to produce increased amount of estrogens and to start producing the egg cells. At puberty, each ovary contains up to 400,000 primary follicles. The follicles help an egg mature for release into reproductive tract. About 400 eggs are released in a woman's lifetime. So the figure shows the structure of the female reproductive organ or system. You have the front view and the side view. So you have there the ovary which are highlighted in both. So we have both sides, left and the right. One ovary usually produces and releases one mature ovum every 28 days or so, and this process of egg formation and release occurs as part of the menstrual cycle, a regular sequence of events involving the ovaries, the lining of the uterus, and the endocrine system. So the menstrual cycle is regulated by hormone made by the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and ovaries. It is controlled by internal feedback mechanism. During the menstrual cycle, an egg develops within a follicle and is released from an ovary. In addition, the uterus is prepared to receive a fertilized egg. Then if an egg is not fertilized, it is discharged along with the lining of the uterus, and that comes out as menstrual blood. While if an egg is fertilized, of course, embryonic development begins and the menstrual cycle ceases or stops. So the menstrual cycle includes the follicular phase, ovulation, luteal phase, and menstruation. So let's start with the follicular phase. On day 1 of a menstrual cycle, blood estrogen levels are low. So as you can see from the figure, day 1, okay, the estrogen levels are low as well as the LH. The hypothalamus secretes and releasing hormones that stimulates the anterior pituitary to secrete FSH and LH as well. So LH and FSH on the first 2 days, as you can see, they are above or in greater number of the estrogen. The estrogen is represented by the blue line, FSH by red line, and purple line are the or is the LH. So these two hormones travel to the ovaries where they cause a follicle to mature. So as the follicle develops, the cells surrounding the egg enlarge and begin to produce increased amounts of estrogen. The estrogen level in the blood rises dramatically. So here, if you've noticed from the first days, the estrogen levels are low. Then on the 9th or 10th day to 12, you can see that the estrogen levels are increasing. High blood estrogen levels cause the hypothalamus to produce less releasing hormone, and the pituitary releases less LH and FSH. So here you will notice that at this level, when the estrogen levels are high here, from here, the LH and the FSH are lower. Estrogens also cause the lining of the uterus to thicken in preparation for receiving a fertilized egg. The development of an egg during this phase takes about 10 days. As the follicle grows, it releases more and more estrogens. When concentrations of these hormones reach a certain level, A hypothalamus reacts by triggering a burst of LH and FSH from the anterior pituitary. For ovulation stage, the sudden increase in these hormones causes the follicle to rupture. If we're going to look at the figure, the follicle has ruptured, then it results to ovulation wherein the release of an egg or the egg is released from the ovary into one of the fallopian tubes. So the egg is drawn into the fallopian tubes wherein microscopic cilia push the cell towards the uterus. So what happens during the luteal phase? As the egg moves through the fallopian tube, the ruptured follicle turns yellow, now known as the corpus luteum, which means yellow body in Latin. So if you have noticed that before the ovulation period, you have noticed that there are some yellowish substance that is secreted in our reproductive system or reproductive organ. So to continue, the corpus luteum continues to release estrogens and begins to release progesterone, which stimulates the growth and development of the blood supply surrounding tissue in the uterine lining. The rise in these hormones inhibits the production of FSH and LH, preventing development of additional follicles during this cycle. So you can, as you can see rather in the graph, during the luteal phase, progesterone is now being increased, and the FSH and LH are decreasing. That is to minimize or, of course, inhibits the production of the follicles. So unless fertilization occurs and embryo starts to develop, the fall of LH levels leads to the degeneration of the corpus luteum. So estrogen levels fall as well. The hypothalamus signals the release of FSH and LH from the anterior pituitary, and the follicular phase begins again. At the start of the new follicular phase, low estrogen levels cause the lining of the uterus to detach from the uterine wall. So this is now what we call as menstruation. So that this tissue, along with blood and the unfertilized egg, are discharged through the vagina during a phase called menstruation. The menstrual cycle continues on average until a female is in her late 40s to early 50s, at which point, or at this point, the production of estrogen declines and ovulation and menstruation stop. And this permanent stopping of the menstrual cycle is called menopause. So pregnancy. The menstrual cycle ceases if a woman becomes pregnant. So during the first 2 days of the luteal phase, immediately following ovulation, the chances that an egg will be fertilized are the greatest. This means that this is where a point at which sperm can meet the egg and become fertilized. This is usually from 10 to 14 days after the completion of the last menstrual cycle. So this is where a woman could greatly, or there is a greater chance for pregnancy. If a sperm fertilizes an egg, the fertilized egg completes meiosis and immediately undergoes mitosis. After several divisions, a ball of cells will form and implant itself in the lining of the uterus. Then the uterus and embryo begin to release hormones that keep the corpus luteum functioning for several weeks. This prevents the menstrual cycle from starting again. So let's move on now to the sexually transmitted diseases. What are some of the most commonly reported sexually transmitted diseases? Examples of these are chlamydia, and it's not only the most common bacterial STD, it is the most commonly reported bacterial disease in the United States. There are also viral STDs, which includes hepatitis B, genital herpes, genital warts, and AIDS. And these diseases that are spread by sexual contact are known as sexually transmitted diseases or STDs or STIs, sexually transmitted infections. A 2008 study by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention showed that 1 in 4 females aged 14 to 19 were infected with an STD. Chlamydia, as what I've mentioned, is the most common bacterial STD, and it is the most commonly reported bacterial disease in the United States. So you can see in the figure how chlamydia or how it is transmitted and its effect on the body. Chlamydia damages the reproductive tract and can lead to infertility, meaning you are not unable to give birth or become pregnant. So you can, as you can see from the figure, how it can be transmitted, what is the effect on the body, and its location, or how it can be prevented rather. The viral STDs include hepatitis B and genital herpes, genital warts, and AIDS, as what I've mentioned earlier. Unlike the bacterial STDs, viral infections cannot be treated with antibiotics. Antibiotics are only used for bacterial diseases, so it cannot affect or treat viral infections. Some viral STDs, such as AIDS, can be fatal. Several strains of the virus that causes genital warts, human papilloma virus or HPV, which are a major cause of cervical cancer for women. Recently, a vaccine has been developed that can prevent HPV infections. So STD can be actually avoided. The safest course is to abstain from sexual contact before marriage, and for both partners in a committed relationship to remain faithful. So the next safest course is to use also latex condom, but even condoms do not provide 100% protection. So let us now summarize the lesson of the whole reproductive system of a male and female, and as well as rather the sexually transmitted diseases. So during the sexual development, hormones released by the ovaries and testes cause sexual development during puberty, which is a period of rapid growth and sexual maturation that usually starts between the ages of 9 and 15. At the end of puberty, the male and female reproductive organs are fully developed and become fully functional. In the male reproductive system, the main role of the male reproductive system is to make and deliver sperm. The testes are the main organs of the male system. Two testes are held in an external sac called the scrotum. The testes make sperm in tiny tubes called seminiferous tubules. The sperm mature and are stored in the epididymis. A tube called a vas deferens carries sperm from each testis to the urethra within the penis. Along the way, secretions of several glands form a nutrient-rich fluid called seminal fluid. The combination of sperm and seminal fluids is called semen. Semen leaves the body through the urethra. Contractions eject semen from the penis in a process called ejaculation. A mature sperm cell consists of a head that contains a nucleus, a midpiece that is packed with mitochondria to power the propelling sperm, and a flagellum as well that helps in movement of the sperm. In the female reproductive system, the main roles of the female reproductive system are to make eggs and prepare the female body to nourish an embryo. The ovary is the main organ of the female system. Each ovary has thousands of follicles, which are clusters of cells that surround an egg. A mature egg moves through the fallopian tube to the uterus. which is connected to the outside of the body by the vagina. Beginning in puberty, the female body goes through a menstrual cycle, a series of events that prepares the body to care for a fertilized egg. A menstrual cycle has four phases: follicular phase, in which an egg matures in its follicle; the ovulation, the mature egg is released from the ovary; the luteal phase, wherein the follicle develops into a structure called the corpus luteum; and menstruation, the lining of the uterus falls away and leaves the body through the vagina if the egg is not fertilized. And lastly, the sexually transmitted diseases. A disease spread during sexual contact is called a sexually transmitted disease, or STD. Bacteria and viruses can cause STDs, and these are chlamydia, syphilis, gonorrhea, and AIDS. So that's it, girls, for this lesson. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.